Well, hi everyone. Welcome to our webcast on this topic of measurement's unique impact on strategy execution or strategy implementation, if that's what you prefer to call it. This is about four very specific things that are vitally important to successful strategy execution or implementation, and they only come from proper performance measurement. Now, you may or may not know who I am, depending on how you've come to join this webcast, and also my co-host. So let me spend just a few minutes introducing myself, and my co-host Peter Ndaa will introduce himself as well. So I'm Stacey Barr. I am a performance measure or KPI specialist. I'm the creator of Pump, which is possibly the world's only full and deliberate approach to performance measurement. And this method, Pump, it's evolved with my experience and learning with all the organizations that I've worked with since back in the 1990s, last century. Anyway, today it has evolved over this time into an 8-step process. It's supported by very practical techniques and very practical templates to measure the performance of pretty much anything. And it does this in a way that really engages people. It brings so much more meaning to measurement and insight to our performance improvement. Now, later in this webcast, we will walk you through those 8 steps of Pump. But for now, I would like to introduce you to my co-host, who is my regional licensed Pump partner for Africa and the Middle East, Peter Ndaa. Welcome, Peter.
Good morning, everyone. As they said, my name is Peter Ndaa, and I do specialize in strategy design, execution, and performance measurement. To me, measurement is the missing link in the strategic management process, and it links strategy design with strategy implementation. It's actually the feedback loop that provides us with the necessary information on progress made towards achieving our goals. And therefore, I find measurement really that critical process in the whole strategic management process. Stacey?
Exactly. So performance measurement and Pump in particular really does have a lot to do with strategy execution. Something every organization's got to do to stay relevant in the world, to thrive as well, to make the difference that it exists to make. But like anything that happens in complex organisms, it doesn't always go to plan. Most of us have struggled to get strategy fully and successfully implemented or executed. And my hope, and I'm sure Peter's hope too, because it was really this whole webcast topic came out of Peter's brain, his experience with all of this. So our hope is that our time together with you today gives you some insight into this unique role that proper performance measurement has in strategy execution. The vast majority of the Pump team's work in performance measurement honestly has been with its use in measuring strategy. And over all these years, we see the same struggles continually surfacing for people who are trying to measure strategy. If any of what I'm about to list resonates with you, just raise your hand as soon as you hear something that, I mean your virtual hand, by the way, because I can't see your real hand, your virtual hand in the webcast control panel. If any of these are relevant to you, goals that are too intangible to measure, measures that are too trivial to be useful, a lack of staff engagement in measuring strategy, a fear of measurement being used as a big stick, and the time and effort to get measures implemented and reported. Now, of course, there are more. Did any of those resonate with any of you? I can see Levine, yeah, you're saying yes. Anyone else seen any of those problems in your organization? Rob, yep, no surprise. Robert, hi. Yeah, cool. Now, the same goes for strategy execution, really. Similar struggles get in the way of strategy being cascaded or, getting everyone aligned to it, having it understood, having it monitored, and ultimately achieving it. So some use the term strategy execution, like I said before, others use the term strategy implementation, but both of these mean carrying out the actions required to achieve the strategic goals. And if the strategic goals were well designed and meaningfully measured, then meeting them means that we've made our strategic plan become our new reality. And we meet the strategic goals by carrying out very deliberately chosen change initiatives or improvement projects. But true strategy execution is not action addiction. It's not just a focus on all the things we are doing like we see in so many organizations. You probably all know as well as we do why strategy execution seems to fail so often. So depending on what you read, we can hear that somewhere between 60% and 90% of strategic plans fail. Now, I read in an HBR, Harvard Business Review article in 2020 where they had mentioned some very disturbing numbers actually. I think this research is actually a bit older, but still considered to be fairly relevant today. 85% of executive leadership teams spend less than 1 hour per month discussing strategy. 50% spend no time at all discussing strategy. And 95% of employees don't understand their company's strategy. And that is alarming. Now, most of the failure of strategy can rest on implementation, but the design of strategy plays a really important role in the failure as well. Strategy experts give us all kinds of reasons for this, too much internal focus, not deeply understanding the environment that the organization's constrained by, or the organization's capabilities, not understanding them, a lack of strategic thinking skills in the leadership team, uncoordinated or even conflicting priorities, and all the typical implementation problems like lack of communication, lack of understanding of goals, poor cascading, strategies that aren't actionable, unclear responsibilities, and so on. Hey, Peter.
Yeah. Most of those problems need to be dealt with in the strategy design process. But let us pick up at the point where we do have a strategy based on good thinking and research, a strategy that is worth implementing. And let us also assume, and it's a safe assumption, that measurement has an essential and non-negotiable part to play in the achievement of strategy. Measurement is the only objective way to track the achievement of goals over time and tell us how well our strategies are working and when to take course correcting action. Now, are these statistics, which I've just seen, far off what happens in your organizations or not?
Well, let's find out. We've got a poll for you all to participate in. How successful is strategy execution in your organization? So please, just in the poll, just choose the answer that's closest related to what you have seen in your organization. Is it that strategy is almost fully executed? Is it that strategy is mostly executed? Or is it mostly not executed or almost never executed? And of course, you can use the word implemented instead of executed if you prefer. So I'll give you a bit more time. We've had just over 2/3 of you have voted, which is fantastic. So I'll give you a bit more time for the rest of you. Another few seconds. Great, okay, so let me share the results with you all. Now, Peter, what we're seeing is that very few of our audience are in organisations where strategy is almost fully executed, but the majority are kind of where it's either mostly executed or mostly not executed. Does that surprise you, seeing those numbers?
Not at all, not at all. I think this is in line with most of the feedback we get from our clients.
And probably,
yeah.
Yeah, and probably not, well, probably a little bit better than those Harvard Business Review statistics, but not a great deal better, I guess.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, cool. If any of you have a reaction to that, to those results, if they surprised you or not, go right ahead and just type something in the questions box for us, and you can interact with us anytime you want to using the questions box throughout the webcast. I'm keeping a keen eye on that, so your comments will not be overlooked. But thanks for participating in the poll. We've got a few more coming up, so hopefully that will have warmed you up a little bit. Now, as the topic of this webcast suggests, there are 4 ways that strategy execution will fall over when the measurement process isn't done properly. So we're going to go right ahead now and dive into the very first one. The first way that strategy execution falls over is in how the strategy is articulated. And what I mean by that is simply the words that we use to write the goals and objectives that make up the strategy. So this starts at the corporate level, but the same wording problem can continue into all the operational goals as well. The words that I'm talking about, these problem words, we call weasel words, and that just means it's a word that's ambiguous. It can mean different things to different people in different contexts at different times. They're not specific words, they're not observable words, and that makes them not measurable. Now, a strategy that people don't understand or have mixed up interpretations of, it can never get implemented because no one knows what result they're supposed to be focusing on. I remember a few years ago being in Wellington in New Zealand, running our pump blueprint training with a group of people in a government agency. And during one of the breaks, I was talking to one of the senior leaders who just happened to drop by to see how the training was going. And he made some comment wondering why it was so hard to get people engaged in the strategy. I responded to him, but he had this absolutely stunned expression on his face because I said that his employees were too scared to let him know they didn't understand the goals. He had no idea that they didn't understand the goals and were too scared to tell him. Many executives like him also have no idea that the goals they write are just not understood by their staff. Now, the words in our goals can and should be changed to make them clear. Peter, how about you guide us through how?
The way to bring goals into focus so that everyone understands them is to change the weasel words to language that even a 10-year-old can understand. It's not to dumb down the goals, it's to make them clearly say what they meant all along. They become simple to understand that way, even if they are not simplistic to achieve. This is important in the measurement process because vague goals can't be measured meaningfully. In PAMP, our measurement methodology, we deal with this problem before we move on to choosing performance measures. And the PAMP technique we use goes a little like this. Take this goal, for example, foster a collaborate and engaged workforce. Now, both collaborative and engaged are weasel words. Most people will have a different idea of what this mean, and everyone else will have no idea at all. So what do the leaders really mean by these words? Collaborate means that teams reach their goals without manager intervention. And engaged means that people never tire of the work they do here. And so we can rewrite the original goals using words that much more clearly and specifically communicate what we really meant in the first place. And now they are measurable too, these particular goals. Now that you have seen what we mean by the way goals are worded, what is it like in your organization?
So how well does your organization avoid those weasel words in goals? So let me ask you via a poll. And again, what's your best assessment of the use of weasel words in your organization? Do you deliberately avoid them and remove them from your goals? Or are you aware of them, but you can't change them? Is it something you never think about? Do people just never think about weasel words in goals? Or could it be that they're even deliberately used? Goals are deliberately written with weasel words. What is the best situation or best description there of the situation in your organization? So we're a little past half of you have voted. Thank you. That's awesome. I'll give the rest of you a little bit more time. Great. Just a few more seconds. And now let me share the results with you. So I think, Peter, it's good to see that at least a few are already aware of this weasel word problem and are deliberate, trying to avoid them. It's good that there's so many, like 42% of you are saying that you're at least aware of them, but you are not able to change them yet for whatever reason. But we've got more than half of our audience are in organisations where they just don't think about weasel words or deliberately use them. So how does that compare with your experience, Pete, with the clients that you have worked with?
Yeah, most clients I work with actually don't really think about weasel words because the weasel words tend to be broad, and we believe strategy needs to be broad and all-encompassing. And you find most people don't even think about them.
Yeah, and it's quite a revelation to the people that we work with when we introduce this idea of a weasel word. Suddenly they can't unsee the weasel words. They just see them everywhere and now appreciate the damage that they do with helping people understand what a goal means, but also with how to measure them. So it's one of the profound mindset shifts that Pump creates is, this is why it's so hard to measure things meaningfully. Thank you everyone for participating in that poll. Writing goals clearly actually helps directly with preventing the next way that strategy execution can fall down. Let me explain that to you. So the second way that strategy execution can fall over is the way that strategy is cascaded, or we often use the word alignment to mean the same thing. It is not enough to just give teams some strategic initiatives to implement, because they also need to know what results their actions should create or improve. Great strategy execution happens when people are engaged in the difference that they're part of creating. Just blindly ticking off tasks and milestones without a clear outcome is not engaging at all. But it also doesn't work to give them their own mini-me version of the strategic goals either, because copies of the strategic goals don't make sense in every team. Not every team, for example, should be cutting their costs in order to reach the corporate cost reduction goal. I heard this recently from a client. He said, it's like trying to win a hockey game by getting each and every player to score a goal, even the goalie, which makes no sense. So the only way that teams throughout the organization can know what to do to help achieve the strategic goals is to know their own unique way to contribute to those goals. So we need to cascade strategy or get that alignment, build that alignment with cause-effect thinking, not a mini-me duplication. And a cause-effect map really helps us visualize that cascading and that alignment. What we can then build from the cause-effect cascading is like a clear line of sight for every team from the results that they are responsible for, with that cause-effect flow all the way through to the parts of the strategic direction that they contribute to. Pete's going to walk us through an example.
This line of sight helps us to connect every team to a purpose, a context, and a bigger picture. It is something that Dan Pink talks about in his book, Drive. This desire we all have to connect to something bigger than ourselves. In measurement, we talk a lot about lead indicators and about aligning KPIs to strategy. Neither of those are possible if we don't cascade strategy in a way that builds this cause-effect map that unifies every team's role in strategy execution. In PAMP, we use a technique called results mapping to do this. We start by making sure each strategic goal and the mission and vision is worded clearly and measurably, like we just discussed earlier. Then we start the map with these measurable versions of the mission and vision and strategic goals. This example is for a medicinal chocolate manufacturer. Part of their vision is that medicinal chocolate production causes no harm in the world. And one of their strategic goals is that cocoa farmers lift their communities out of poverty. One department in this organization is the procurement and partnerships department. That works with the farmers and suppliers to get the ingredients. They have two goals that directly contribute to this strategic direction. Cocoa farms are profitable and chocolate production is carbon and forestry positive. And teams within the procurement and partnership departments then have their own goals that contribute to those blue goals. Cocoa farms have high yields of high quality beans. Cocoa farms are entirely organic, and all ingredients from sustainable, all ingredients come from sustainable producers. Imagine this map also includes including all the strategic goals and all the departments within their own goals linking into into each other.
And that, what Peter's just described, is the pump results map. One of my first clients to work with the pump results map was a CEO, and he gave it a nickname. He called it the Where's Wally diagram. I don't know which part of the world you're joining from. You might know it as Where's Waldo. Maybe in the questions box, just type in which term you're familiar with that cartoon. It's the little guy in the red and white striped cap or t-shirt, and you've got to find him in some really, really complex cartoon. So are you a Where's Wally or a Where's Waldo, or is there something else? But anyway, the CEO, Matt, he loved how the concept was simple. And once you find Wally or Waldo, and really Wally or Waldo could be any team within the organization, you know immediately how they contribute to what's important to the organization. Alan, I don't know where you're from, but wherever it is, it's Where's Wally there as well. Thanks for sharing that. But the point about it is everyone can find themselves in a results map like this, even though they can get a bit complex. The concepts are simple, the way they work is simple, and it clarifies things. So how is strategy cascaded in your organization, or how does your organization build alignment for everybody to strategy? What's the primary method, I guess, that strategy is cascaded to teams in your organization? So do you use a cause effect map like the pump results map? Or are you using tiered strategy maps like the balanced scorecard does? Or in your organization, is every team getting a copy, like a mini-me copy of the corporate goals or measures? Or do you not cascade the strategic goals? Maybe it's just actions that get cascaded. Or is there no cascading at all? There's just a strategic plan and everybody just figures things out and does things for themselves without being aligned to it at all. So our pattern seems to be the same. Just over half of you have voted. I'll give you a little bit more time and then share the results with you. Okay, I'm just going to close the poll now and show you all. So this is interesting. No one's using a map like the results map. So that's I hope that's got all of you curious about how a results map actually works, and you can find more detail about it on my blog, and also it's obviously one of the tools we teach in pump training. 18% of you are using tiered strategy maps, but the most common option here, Peter, is that it's that, you know, over 40% of organizations here are every team's just getting a copy of the corporate goals, and about a quarter there's no cascading at all. Does that, anything there jump out at you?
Oh yeah, most people in Africa and Middle East use the balance scorecards in the organizations, and this habit of having the mini goals is very common with people using the balance scorecard. Goals are just the corporate goals are just handed over across the organization, and people believe that's what creates alignment.
And it doesn't. And Peter knows what he's talking about, everyone. He was a balanced scorecard expert even before he became a pump expert. So he understands both, and he knows how to make both work. So anyway, this way of cascading strategy, like Peter showed you before with the results map, it's not just useful for putting a spotlight on measuring what matters for everyone, not just at the strategy level, but all throughout the organization. The results map's also helpful for the third way that strategy execution can fall down. And this third way that strategy execution can fall over is when performance monitoring is all about monitoring the progress of actions, the strategic initiatives, for example, rather than the results. So sure, when we're implementing strategy, we are implementing change projects, and part of project management is monitoring the progress of tasks and achieving or reaching milestones. But the problem that this creates for strategy execution is that it's too easy for the wrong actions to be implemented well, and then the intended results never happen and the intended goals are never achieved. One of Australia's past prime ministers was interviewed on a program called the 730. It was just called the 730 program, the 730 report or something, doesn't matter. But the journalist Lee Sales, she asked the Prime Minister about the KPIs that he'd set for himself and what the public should judge him against. He replied that they should judge against the delivery of the commitments that they'd made, and that the fundamental measurement was that the projects were underway, being delivered, and being delivered on budget. So what Lee Sales was asking the leader of our government at the time was about the results or impact that the public could expect from his term in government, and his response was that his term in government will be successful if they implement projects. This is such a typical response from so many leaders about how they define success, that actions get done. There's not nearly enough talk about what the impact of those actions should be or is. So project management, the point here is that project management is not the same as performance management. How we measure project implementation is not the same as how we measure performance improvement. Strategy is fundamentally about performance improvement. So we need to keep the project management style of reporting, absolutely, and monitoring, but we need to add true performance measurement to that. So Peter, let's build on this example and show how that works with the results map.
Yeah, true performance measurement is when we are quantifying direct evidence of the results we are trying to improve through our strategy. This helps make our goals even more tangible and easier to understand. Good performance measures are cause correcting feedback, not after the fact proof. So we also need to measure frequently enough to take course correcting action. Good performance measures give us objective truth about how well our strategic initiatives are working, which directly helps leaders and teams keep strategy execution on track. So we don't just monitor the implementation of each strategic initiative. That's project management. We need to monitor the degree to which each of the goals or results are being achieved. That's performance management. So the owners of each goal will design quantitative measures that directly evidence that goal and monitor them frequently over time to make sure they're changing the way they're meant to. Now, how meaningful we can design measures for our goals or results depends significantly on the first point I made today, that our goals need to be worded measurably. And PAMP helps us to do that. PAMP also has a measure design technique that builds meaningful measures from the direct evidence of those measurable results, goals. No brainstorming is necessary here. It's a pretty deliberate method which leads you to getting your measures. So what's the balance between measuring action and measuring results in your strategy execution?
So we're really asking how much of your strategy execution is based on action measures versus result measures. So please do let us know. Here comes the poll. It could be that your organization has mostly result-based measures. It could be that you've got a mix of results-based and action-based measures. And I'm talking about in the context of your strategic plan as well. Third option here is that maybe strategy is monitored mostly with action-based measures, or perhaps no measures at all. So which of those options best suits or describes your organization at this time? I'll give you a little bit more time to put in your vote. And I'll close the poll now and share the results with you all. So here we go. It's great to see that there are some of you that have very strategies that are monitored mostly with results-based measures. That's brilliant. A few of you having no measures at all, which is kind of a good situation because it means you get the opportunity now to design results-based measures and not waste your time with action-based measures. Those of you with a mix, that's probably pretty typical if you're making the transition from action-based to results-based. But if you've got mostly action-based measures, here's a great opportunity for you to improve your strategy implementation success as well. Pete, any thoughts from you about that?
Yeah, there's very interesting results because what I've found out that is that in most government or public sector organization, we have mostly action-based measures. In the private sector, and sometimes governmental bodies, you find a mixture of result and action-based measures. So that's quite interesting results from the poll.
Yeah. Lubna has asked a question, are action-based measures the same as operational KPIs? In some organizations, they might make the mistake and think that they are, but they're actually not. We can have very result-oriented, results-based measures at the operational levels. We can think about amount of rework, we can think about cycle times, we can think about waste. There are a whole lot of things that we can track that are results-based at the operational level. The kind of action-based measures we're wanting to avoid is just measuring how much work we're doing or how many milestones we're hitting. That's really, I think, it's not telling us the impact. But if we are implementing our waste reduction program, that's an action-based measure, but what's the result from it? The result might be the amount of waste that goes to landfill, and we want to reduce that over time. So the result-based measure is probably the amount of waste that goes to landfill. So operational measures absolutely can be results-based too. But thanks for your question, Lubna, that's great. We have one more reason to share with you why strategy execution can fall on its face, so to speak. The fourth way that strategy execution can fall over is when the strategic initiatives themselves fail to improve performance. Almost none of the organizations that we've worked with or consulted with have used process analysis to identify improvement initiatives. Almost none. It's something that I learned about back in the 90s, but just don't see being used very often anywhere. Instead, the selection of strategic initiatives is often based on what the leadership felt needed to be done to achieve goals. It was just their ideas about what to do. This limits how likely the initiatives are to work, but there are another two specific reasons why initiatives won't work. The first reason is choosing change initiatives and targets for a goal before we choose and review the goal's performance measures. So when we don't spend enough time to understand the size and gap between current and target performance, we don't really know how much change is needed, and we don't really know what kind of change initiative to design. The second reason is focusing on actions to hit targets rather than on actions that help us to continually reach toward those targets. Now, that languaging is deliberate. Rather than hitting targets, we want to reach toward them. Like when leaders focus on metrics to push people to achieve daily, weekly, or monthly numbers or quotas, and then they often blame those people for poor performance if the numbers aren't met or the targets aren't hit. Even worse, when hitting these targets is linked to rewards or remuneration, the use of process improvement to reach performance targets is ignored in favor of the quick fixes, again, just to hit the numbers as soon as possible. So fundamentally, the problem is that people rush to choose initiatives before choosing the performance measures and then analyzing business processes to find out the root cause that is keeping performance away from the target level. Now, a proper performance measurement approach uses process improvement to close performance gaps so that we can reach for those performance targets. So proper performance measurement should never be about quick fixes or about blame. Proper measurement, therefore, links strategy execution to process improvement. So the order in which we set our strategic initiatives is very important, to base them on process improvements that will, close those performance gaps. So Pete's going to show us how that works with Pump.
When the destination really matters, we of course need to know exactly where we are going and how far we are going before we decide the best way to get there. That's why a result map, along with well-designed measures for each result on the map, is so important to have before we decide on our strategic initiatives. Knowing the performance gaps in our measures is really the same as knowing how much improvement is needed to reach the goals or results that make up our strategy. A performance gap is the difference between current performance and targeted performance. Remember this slice of the results map for a medicinal chocolate manufacturer. And take, for example, the bean count measure for the top orange results. Cocoa farms have high yields of high quality beans. It measures the number of beans in a 100-gram sample of harvested beans. Usually, the larger the bean, the better the quality. So the current performance for bean count might be 101.8 beans per 100 grams sample, but the target might be 96 beans per 100 grams sample. That makes a performance gap of 5.8 beans. To find a good strategic initiative to close this performance gap, we have to first understand why the gap is there. After analysis, they found that the best way to improve the size of the cocoa beans to get to the bean count of 96 was to help farmers standardize the fermentation and drying periods for their beans. When everyone is clear about the results they need to achieve, how they will measure those results, and what the performance gaps are for each of the measures, then it makes more sense where to feed the strategic initiatives into the map. PAM is possibly the only performance measurement approach that helps us find our performance gaps fast, so that we can then find the root causes of those gaps in our business processes. And then we design our strategic initiatives to improve those business processes and thereby close the performance gaps. What does the organization strategy process do?
And what Pete's asking you is pretty much when are initiatives chosen in your organization's strategy process? I'm going to give you 4 options to choose from. Are initiatives chosen first and then you set goals and then measures and targets? Or in your organization, do you set the goals, then set the initiatives, and after that, then you set measures and targets? Or do you set the goals and then the targets, then go and choose your initiatives, and after that, set the measures? Or do you choose goals, then measures, then set targets for the measures, and then choose the initiatives? Which approach best describes what happens in your organization? There's a little bit more to think about there, so I'll give you a bit more time to respond to this poll. And I think out of all the polls, Peter, so far I'm seeing that this one's probably what our audience is doing the best.
Really?
I'll reveal that shortly. Okay, I'll give a few more seconds and then close and share the results with you. Okay. And the highest participation rate in that poll as well, interestingly.
Wow, very interesting.
I thought it, yeah, it is. I thought it would be more complex. Okay, everyone, you can see the results now.
Right.
The thing that surprised me, Pete, that I thought was quite good is nearly 20% of our audience are doing exactly what I think we should be doing, which is setting our goals first, then our measures, then targets, and then initiatives after that. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
The most common response here, though, 42%, goals, then targets, then initiatives, then measures. But I think in that case, Pete, it's fair to say it's hard to set a target until you know what the measure is, wouldn't you say?
It is very difficult. But yeah, what again goes with how leaders behave. They already have numbers they want to achieve. And once they have the goals, they're saying we need to achieve X number.
Yeah.
Then they choose the initiative. It's quite interesting, but that's really what happens. Yeah.
And then there are a few of you also who are choosing goals, then initiatives, and worrying about the measures and targets later, or starting with initiatives. 15% of you starting with initiatives and then thinking about goals. So it's kind of really back to front in my mind that why choose an action to do and then what you set a goal to make up a rationale for why you do the action. I know I've seen that happen, so I probably shouldn't be laughing, but yeah, it's a really subtle thing to think about, and I think a lot of organizations just don't think about that order in which they set these things. In Pump, we do number 4. Thanks everyone for sharing your experiences in that poll. So there you have it. We've gone through 4 ways that performance measurement, proper performance measurement, will uniquely impact on strategy execution. Let me give you a really fast summary. The first thing that good measurement contributes to strategy execution is real measurability of goals. Good measurement forces us to describe the specific, clear, and observable results in language that a 10-year-old could understand. And when strategy is understood, it is much easier to implement as well as measure. The second thing that good measurement contributes to strategy execution is this line of sight alignment. So good measurement involves cascading strategy through a cause-effect map, like that results map, helps every team see their unique contribution to achieving the overall strategy. And when strategy is made locally relevant for people like that, it's so much easier to get implemented. The third thing that good measurement contributes to strategy execution is this results-oriented type of measure. Good measurement helps us directly measure the results or the impact of our strategic initiatives, and it does go hand in hand with project management. But when strategy has a results-oriented set of performance measures, it's so much easier to take that course-correcting action if our initiatives turn out to be the wrong ones, and we can do that before it's too late then. And the fourth thing that good measurement contributes to strategy execution is process improvement initiatives. Good measurement helps us understand those performance gaps that our strategy should close. And that means moving current performance closer to targeted performance. And when strategy has process improvement-based initiatives, the strategy has the highest chance of being achieved. So we reckon good performance measurement is so much more powerful than most people realize. There you have it. So from here, we will soon explore your questions. So get them ready and start typing them in if you wish. But how about we have Peter walk you through PUMP so that you can get that big picture of what PUMP is and how it works. So over to you, Pete.
PUMP is a proper performance measurement process with 8 deliberate steps. Step 1 makes sure the entire measurement team understands enough about what good measurement practice is to participate in the process. Step 2 makes sure that the goals or results we want to achieve are written clearly and measurable. Step 3 takes those measurable results one at a time and finds the measures that are the strongest and most feasible evidence to monitor those results. Step 4 checks the results and measures with a broader community of stakeholders in a fun and organic way to make sure they are as good as they can be. Step 5 details the implementation for each measure, from its calculation to the data needed to bring it to life. Step 6 puts the measures into special graphs that clearly show signals of shifts or changes in performance over time. Step 7 adds to those signals of change some extra analysis about causes and recommended actions to keep performance on track. And step 8 puts all this information to use to either create new change initiatives or tweak existing change initiatives to find the best leverage to reach the results. What we have talked about today comes from steps 2 and 3 in PUMP. Those are the steps that directly dovetail into a design of strategy so that strategy can then be implemented more easily and thoroughly and successfully. If you now see how powerful PUMP is in making strategy execution easier and more successful, then why not come and learn more about PUMP with us? In our PUMP Blueprint training programs, you will systematically learn each step of PUMP. You will learn and practice each new technique. You'll see how the corresponding template or tool makes it practical and collaborative. You'll have really examples to follow to provide an example of how others have done it. We also go beyond case studies. We give time and coaching to help you apply PUMP steps to measure your own really life goals. When you go back to work after the program, you will know what to do, how to do it, and where to find support for deeper dives. We provide a free silver membership in our PUMP community for exclusive case studies, how-to tips, and exclusive webcasts. You can learn the PUMP Blueprint live in the following ways. Either at one of our live public training workshop serving the African and Middle East, or by hosting your own private in-house workshop exclusive with your colleagues, or contacting me if you'd like more information about how we can help you with better performance measurement and evidence-based leadership. Our next upcoming online 5 half-day PAMP Blueprint workshop is on the 20th November to the 2nd of December this year. So you can book yourself a space. Before we wrap up, are there any unanswered questions you still have about strategy execution or PAMP?
Indeed, questions. I can see one already. I think we've got a few others. So, and by the way, we have put into the chat box for you a link to BC, where you can go and read about the upcoming programs. So easier than trying to type down what you saw in the slide there. Peter's colleague Faith is in the background there helping us with that. Thanks, Faith. Okay, so Alan has got the first question, Peter. How many strategic measures do you typically see in organizations with mature strategies? How many strategic measures do we typically see? I'm going to say generally it varies, but I've got a range I would probably think of, Peter. But what do you see?
Yeah, it varies, but it tends to be within a certain range. That's what I've observed, depending on the industry, of course. Yeah. And for me, I don't know what Stacey you have observed, but for me, the range I've seen as few as 6 and as many as around 10, 12 measures. Yeah, but it varies from organization to organization. Yeah.
I think that's kind of what we would be targeting, because too many strategic measures is just overwhelming, and it sends a confused message to the rest of the organisation and doesn't look like anything's been prioritised. So I would say between that 6 and 10 is probably ideal. There are organisations that will try to do more, and I think they'll end up, they'll have something like 12 strategic goals and 18 or 20 objectives and 30 or 40 so-called strategic measures. And what that's saying to me is they haven't done the strategic thinking at all. They haven't been ruthless in their prioritization of what matters, and their strategic plan reads more like a business model than a true strategy document. Everyone else, if you've got questions, please go ahead and type them in. We have one here from Said Peter, is saying, who is the owner or who is accountable for the profitability KPI in an organisation? And a follow-up question, who's the owner or who's accountable for all the objectives and KPIs under the financial perspective? I guess that's a balanced course scorecard perspective. So do you have thoughts, Peter, on maybe not just the profitability one, but who are the owners? Who is accountable for what's measured in the strategic plan?
Yeah, I think the owner of a KPI should be the one who is able to improve that KPI, or able to make the decisions to ensure that that KPI is tracked, that KPI is improved, that KPI is reported, so that person is the best person to be the owner. What is interesting, especially with profitability KPIs, is that in most cases people think is the CFO just because he reports the KPI, but most cases you find the CFO is not the person who actually is able to improve that KPI. Is responsible for the processes that can improve the KPI. So I think the best person is that who is able to ensure that whatever processes that are linked to that KPI can be improved, and has the authority to make sure that they're improved. Stacey?
Yeah, I can't improve on your answer to that, Peter. I 100% agree. And it's not always obvious at first who should be the owner of a KPI. not necessarily based on the function that they have. It's totally based on what you've said, which is their ability to influence the processes that can change it. Cool. Here's a question from Rael. How is this strategy execution different from balanced scorecard approach, as I see a lot of similarity? Pete, I might just have a quick response to that first, but given that you're much more of a balanced scorecard expert than me, I'll let you follow up. So Rahel, the pump is not a strategy execution process. It's a performance measurement process. I know Peter will have things to say about that, which will be good, but we often say you are not ready for pump until you have a proper strategy designed, because it is about measuring things. So what we've shared with you today is really about the intersection or interface between a measurement methodology like pump, proper measurement, and the strategy execution. So that's kind of my big picture answer. But Peter, do you want to go a bit deeper?
Yes, that's right, Stacey. And I want just to clarify something here about balanced scorecard. Balanced scorecard basically means a report form. However, they are balanced scorecard based performance management processes or systems, like the balanced scorecard institute 9 steps, Palladian's or Kaplan's and Norton's execution premier, which is a 6-step process. Now we shouldn't confuse those, balanced scorecard as it were, and balanced scorecard based performance management system. And indeed, Stacey, as you have said, the pump cannot be compared to a balanced scorecard performance management process. Pump comes in to, even if you're using balanced scorecard, it comes in to help you develop meaningful measures. So you can integrate pump into your balanced scorecard performance management process to help you get better measures and execute your strategy.
Yeah, nice. That's great, Pete. Katrina has a comment and a question. Thanks for sharing the pump basics. Coming from an organization that is with no strategic measures, was so glad to hear that this can be viewed as a good thing. Well, it is, Katrina. You've got a blank slate and you can start the right way, which is great. You won't be wasting time and effort and energy. So Katrina goes on to ask, we are aligning our outcomes to well-being impacts. Does this help or hinder with defining good measures? Peter, I'm thinking Katrina might be concerned about the intangibility of well-being, maybe, and that might be a problem for defining good measures. But Katrina, if that's the case, no, it's not going to hinder you at all. I think the idea of anything, even well-being, it can be made tangible and can be made meaningfully measurable. So that's my take. If I've misinterpreted your question, go right ahead and ask it a different way. Pete, did you get a different feeling from Katrina's question, or?
No, it's just same as you, because and I think Katrina's concerns are real. A lot of people feel that their results or their goals cannot be measured because they're too intangible. But that's the whole point of having pump, because it makes all these intangible results measurable.
Yeah. Lubna's asking, how do you measure the impact of goals that are intangible, long-term, and constantly evolving due to changing circumstances like political goals? I've got a response to that straight away, but I don't want to go first every time. Peter, do you have any response for that?
No, I'll let you go first. Okay, but let me give it a go, then you can respond to it. But from my experience, goals don't change. If you articulate your goal well, a result-oriented goal or result-based goals, they don't change, because this is a desired end state, something you want to, a state of being in the future, a change you want. So that hardly changes. And for most organizations, including public sector I work with, you find once they articulate their goals, those goals remain for 20, 30 years. Every time I've gone back to check, the goals are still the same, because regardless of what changes, regardless of the political environment, the desired result is the same. If you want your people to have better life or better healthcare, that can't change regardless of the political changes in political environment. Stacey.
I like that. I was sort of going to take a similar angle with my response as well, that really what's probably evolving is how well we are articulating the goal, but the fundamental goal at its core, really, they don't change that much. And if we were in an organization where the goals kept changing all the time, and at the same time, those goals are long term. It takes a long time to impact on them. We're in an organization that doesn't know what it's doing. It's full of chaos. So I don't think that's really the case for you, probably, Lubna. It's more what Peter said, where the goals are fundamentally the same. It's just how they're being articulated can make them clearer, make them less intangible, and then you can focus on them over the long term and get some changes to happen. Rawlings has asked, a good strategic plan should have how many goals, strategic objectives, and measures? And I think we've kind of touched on that a bit, Peter, with the 6 to 10 is probably the ideal. Is there anything else you want to add to that for Rawlings?
Yeah, I'll just tell him that the fewer the goals, the better. And I would like to refer Rawlings to, frankly, Covey's survey on or research on, on effective organizations, and they say that the fewer the goals, if you have 1 to 3 goals, you're likely to achieve them with excellency. All of them. If you have 4 to 10, you're likely to only achieve 1, and if you have more than that, you're likely to achieve none. So I would just say the fewer the better goals. Yeah, you can have many goals, but I think focus on a few, say 1 to 3 at a time.
Yeah, I like that. The sharper your focus, the more likely you are to achieve success with what you put your time and energy to. Trina has said, I have to run. I'm off to bed in Canada. Thanks for the great session. She said, I've been through Pump with Louise. Louise is just like Peter, our licensed Pump partner for North America, though. Trina says, I'll be spreading the word to further fill up her workshops as well as the virtual sessions. Thanks for the great presentation. Have a great evening. Well, Trina, if you're listening to the recording, lovely to have you join us, even though it's late. Katrina has replied and said, thanks. I was worried that what we have will have too many artifacts shifting focus from our performance. So I think she was happy with our answer for that, which is great. Pete, there's just one more question. This is from Revi, who I think is in Kenya, like you. Revi said, how can one integrate safety targets into the overall company strategy?
Right. I think you have touched on this also, and perhaps Revi, here we're talking about integrating safety goals rather than safety targets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we can do this through what we called cascading on alignment, by you determining what contribution safety is making to the overall mission, vision, or other strategy results. And if you do that, then automatically you'll find yourself the safety goals integrated and the safety measures integrated within your strategy.
Yep, I got nothing to add. That's exactly what I would recommend as well. It's thinking too soon about targets and not thinking about the design of strategy first, and that cause effect integration. That's what we need. Katrina, I just want to respond to you. You've had one more comment there. Looking forward to our session here in Australia in December. Will be loads of fun. It will be. I'm glad to see that you're going to join us. And everyone, even though we had set this up for Peter's time zone in Africa and Middle East, clearly we've got people from all around the world joining us, which is brilliant. Okay, we got to wrap this baby up because we're a little bit past time already. Everyone, Peter and I just so hope that you end up joining our Pump community soon. And obviously, Pump training is the way that gets you into our Pump community. And Peter, thank you as well for your insights today, and really, really great responses to people's questions too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you in one of our Pump workshops across the world. Thank you. Goodbye.
It's been great, everyone, having you join us today. If you've got any further questions, you can email me, info@staceybarr.com, or email Peter if he's in your part of the world, pndaa@bc.org. It's written there on the screen. And yeah, that's it. Until next time, everyone. Bye, and enjoy your new approach to thinking about measurement for strategy implementation. Thanks, everyone. Bye.